If you're looking for some tabletop RPGs to play during Halloween, around Halloween, leading up to Halloween, because you're just in the spooky mood, well, I'm gonna take care of you right here. Let's explore some horror RPGs together on the Sacred Art of Gaming. Welcome back, and now we are going to reach for horror tabletop gaming transcendence as we explore some additional games that you could get to your table tomorrow, in some cases today. And I am Sacred. This is the Sacred Art of Gaming, where we love talking about tabletop role-playing games and all the things that come with it. So first, I would like to start with some honorable mentions, and the reason why these are honorable mentions is not because they are not good. It is because I don't feel like I have enough experience to really be the one to dive full head over heels into them for you in this breakdown. But I do still want you to be aware of them because boy are they popular and boy are they good. It's just a lot of these I digitally own, but just have not gotten to play them yet. Or I've played them a very small amount. Let's get right into those honorable mentions. First one is a big one, and honestly this should be like a two-parter, so maybe this is two. Delta Green and Call of Cthulhu. Holy shit, yes. I know, I'm sorry I have not played these games. I don't know why, but I've been kind of against like Call of Cthulhu type stuff. I thought like the idea of, oh, I'm trying to play the game, but my character is either gonna just die or go insane. Where's the fun in that? Well, I now have changed my mind on that, and I do think it's fun. I think a big part of it was the show Lovecraft Country. I don't know, that just kind of sparked some interest, and then I played the Call of Cthulhu game on the PlayStation Plus subscription service or whatever, and I was like, you know what? I didn't like it then, but I like it now, and that is okay because you're allowed to change your mind. So let's talk about Delta Green and Call of Cthulhu. There is some overlap, but there are some differences too. So they both use a D100 system, which, you know, I used to think was weird, but I am warming up to that idea as well. So we'll start with Delta Green because that one I feel like people would be less aware of that one. Delta Green, you're almost like an X-Files type agent, but you have some additional complications to deal with. And so it's going to be a D100 skill system. There's this cool aspect to it with the bond system. So you have like the obvious one to me would be like your family members, right? So maybe your relationship with your wife is deteriorating as you are fully becoming enveloped in this paranormal investigation world where, you know, you probably don't come home the same after you've dealt with a witch for the third time. Something that's very interesting that I didn't even know is that you are rolling, so it's a D100 percentile system, but you also want to roll high under that, especially whenever it comes to combat, and that's going to determine like who gets a success and stuff. I believe that's referred to as a blackjack system. Yeah, super neat. I dig it. And yeah, you have your sanity that you have to deal with as you're going through these investigations where you're seeing a lot of messed up stuff. And Delta Green, there is some messed up stuff. There's some really messed up stuff. I kind of like messed up stuff, but even for me, I'm kind of like, ooh, man, this is pretty rough. Pretty rough. I know the one that came out recently was rough. So keep that in mind when exploring any of these. A lot of them can be dark, real dark. So as you're going insane, which might just be inevitable for an agent of Delta Green, sometimes other agents will also have to take you out. So that's another interesting wrinkle to that. In addition to, having to fight monsters and investigate like what is going on in that situation. Very X-Files-esque. And then there's also Call of Cthulhu, like I mentioned, a lot of overlap with the system. The difference obviously being is that it's going to be more in that Lovecraftian, dealing with really messed up, and you're probably, So I'm saying this as never played it. I'm under the impression that fighting is really your last resort, whereas in Delta Green, you have more of a fighting chance. Whereas Call of Cthulhu, you really are more on the investigative side, and combat is really not... If you're in combat, it's probably bad. It's probably bad. Next up, and this might have to end up in my collection, because this blew my mind. Cult. With a K. D20 roll under system. Okay, all right, we've got back-to-back roll under. I've been digging the roll under systems, especially D20 for some reason. Dragonbane, that might be my favorite game of this year, but we're talking about horror. The different like magic systems at play are really cool. It's like dreams, madness, time and space, and passion and death. Okay, yeah, so that's the magic, but the whole thing is built around this idea, almost like the Matrix in a way, but it's more kind of built around like a Diablo style horror where, or just very, very Dark Souls-esque, where God, in this instance of this game, kind of wants you dead, and you are on Earth like trapped. You're supposed to be trapped there, and you're supposed to live, die, kind of go to hell where your memories get wiped. I guess the burning that happens in hell is literally just like purging your memories, so this way you don't catch on to the fact that you are living in like a prison. Yeah, it's really wild. And then you also have kind of almost sounds like demons. I think they call them something else. There's like 12 of them, and I think that they're like the jailers, so they are making sure that you are staying within your prison, and going insane is essentially like enlightenment, and that's how you kind of break out of it. I only discovered this one very recently, but man, is it got the juices flowing. It sounds dope. Cult with a K. Chronicle of Darkness. There are a lot of these books, and I have all of them digitally, but I have not played a single one. There's too many games. How do I play them all? And Chronicle of Darkness has a bunch of like, it's got like the vampire one, the werewolf one, there's a changeling one, there's a wizard one, there's so many. This one's going to be using a dice pool, which I noticed a lot of these games are using. It's going to use D10s. So that part is different, and an 8+ is a success. Getting a 10 is going to explode. And I love exploding dice, and that'll, if you need more successes, that will help you. This game also uses death spirals, which I also love, so that's two things from Savage Worlds that this one uses. And I do love Savage Worlds, so exploding dice and then also like a death spiral. And you have some interesting aspects to your character, like your virtues, your vices, aspirations, and that's kind of giving you mechanical but also thematic reasons to do the things that you're doing, and sometimes those things are not in the best interest of you, the player, like vices, but it does give you mechanical benefits. Alien RPG. They're coming out with a second edition, and I'm probably going to get that one, but I've heard nothing but great things about it. I have a friend that's obsessed with Alien RPG, and I did not take him up on any of the opportunities to play it, and boy am I kicking myself for that, because it does sound pretty dope. What is also pretty sweet about the Alien RPG is that you don't just have to play like a horror game. You can also play like a exploration, action, even like political, dealing with the different like companies and stuff. So you have some different options, which is pretty sweet. There is like even a starship like battle system to it, which I haven't heard good things about. But yeah, just kind of needlessly convoluted. But the reason why we're here is because we can kind of get that alien isolation, very, cramped, claustrophobic, diving through like the tight spaces in the ship to avoid the aliens and stuff, and you're dealing with the xenomorphs and the face huggers, and so good. I've seen the physical book. I don't own it myself, but it looks extremely thematic. And this also deals with the sanity system. Gives you you have stress dice, and pushing your roll, that is an aspect of that really is just kind of like a portion of the Year Zero engine that like Coriolis uses, another game we're going to talk about a little later. So this is going to be another dice pool system, which isn't my favorite. The atmosphere and everything else built around it is excellent. There's also 2 different modes of play for this game. So you do have campaign play, which is very interesting. I suppose having those different types of games that you can play definitely helps with that, because if it's horror, it's kind of hard to do more than a one-shot, and then you've also got your one-shot option. That is it for our honorable mentions, and I probably took longer on that than I really should have. Now let's get down to it. 10 Candles. Woo, do I love... This is like the perfect game, in my opinion, to play during Halloween. If you kind of want... Like, you don't even have to be like a gamer, a tabletop gamer. You could play this with just anybody, and it's super thematic. The idea being that you have your 10 candles around the table, you have your cards, you write up some traits, and you pass them around to different people, right and left, I believe, and you end up like building this character where you have 4 cards, and that is your character. So it's not mechanical at all. You're also going to die. It's gonna happen. This is not a game of triumph. This is a game of how you're going to die. Another neat thing about it is that you have like a little message for when you do die that you come up with at the beginning, and then when you die, that's, you know, play the message. I think that's all very cool. So picture you, your friends, and your family, 10 candles at the table, and then something that you can like safely burn the cards in, because that's going to be a big part of the game. And shocker, another dice pool system. You get to roll d6s based on the amount of candles that you have there, and you are looking for a 6. A 6 is good, and a 1 is bad. And whenever you're in a scene and there's something that's in question, your storyteller, dungeon master, whatever the hell it's called in this game, will ask a person to do a roll, and any 1s that are rolled get removed from the pool temporarily. If they roll no 6s at all, that is where bad things happen and a candle is blown out, which removes permanently for the rest of the session the amount of d6s that you can roll. The more d6s you can roll, the better the chances are of rolling a 6. If you roll 1s, that is bad, but it's bad temporarily. So those refresh at the end of a scene based on the amount of candles that you have. But if you roll no 6s, then you start losing candles. As you would guess, the game is over when all of the candles are blown out, and it's gonna happen, and it's gonna be narrative, descriptive in how that goes down. So that does kind of put a heavy load on your storyteller game master. Now, those cards that we were talking about in the burning area, whenever your character does fail, that is where they're going to burn one of their cards. You've got 4 cards. When all of your cards are burned, well, your character is gone. So there are the cards that you have for your character specifically, and then you have the 10 candles for the group and the scenario as a whole. And there's quite a few scenarios that come with the game, but you can also make your own because it's very fast and loose. Love this game. Next, we have Vaesen. And boy, do I want to try this game solo. I have not yet, but I want to. They have solo rules for it. But anyways, this is going to be another one with the Year Zero engine that I alluded to earlier. So this is going to be another D6 system, or D6 dice pool, right? And with this, you're investigators with the sight, where you're kind of able to see these things that nobody else can see. Picture The Witcher, but in a different, more modern time period. And also, it doesn't have to be this, but I definitely picture like almost like an Eastern European in those like dark forests dealing with fae and all kinds of crazy weird creatures that maybe you don't normally think of. This is going a little bit beyond your typical mythology, which I love. Reminds me of like the unique episodes of Supernatural, where you get those like those strange creatures that you're just like, what the hell is this? I now have to research everything there is about a Wendigo. With this game, there may be some similarities between this and Delta Green. I think Delta Green is darker. Could be wrong, but with Vaesen, you essentially have a clock, and you're in an investigation against that clock, and the longer you take, bad things will happen, and every Vaesen is different. So all of them are going to have their own unique things that you need to figure out and do to learn how to stop it. And a lot of times stopping it is not going to be as simple as like just fighting it and killing it with whatever weapon. A lot of times it's like, how can we get it to stop or go away? Or maybe it's not as bad as it seems. Maybe it just needs this thing. So it's a lot of kind of like The Witcher. I feel like there's definitely some side quests in The Witcher that are like that are great, where you're realizing that sometimes just using that silver blade is not the best option. And the longer you take to do it, like I said, more bad things will happen, whether the Vaesen is evil or not. Next up, in a very similar vein, but a different system, we have Monster of the Week. This is going to be using the Powered by the Apocalypse system. So you're going to be dependent on your 2d6, your moves, and then also you have your miss, weak hit, strong hit, more of a narrative type of gameplay. But it does work very well for Monster of the Week. Very similar situation to Vaesen, where you're investigating this creature. And I think that's where it gets very... The horror games that I enjoy, anyways, I'm starting to notice it's either like so dark and you have no chance at all and you're just trying to survive as long as you can. You're just making the most with like toothpicks, or you are really not directly fighting for the most part, and the power is in the knowledge and the research that you're doing. And this one is no different. This one also works very well for something like a kind of like a teenager, if you want to do like Scooby-Doo or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, very similar to East Texas University as well. But there's a certain charm to it where it's not as dark as these other ones. So if you were to play something with children, this is probably the one that I would recommend. With this one, you will be using playbooks, which is another Powered by the Apocalypse ism, which is kind of like a class, sorta, not really. A nice thing about this system is that there are questions on your playbook that build bonds to your other player characters. And I love that kind of thing where the backstory builds itself, and I love when that happens, especially when it's intertwined and it's not just like we're a random group of people that met in a tavern, or in the case of Powered by the Apocalypse, random teenagers that met in detention. As with most Powered by the Apocalypse systems, this one's going to be all about failing forward and then getting experience from your failures. Excellent game. Now allow me to spiral for a moment, because we're about to go down the Savage Worlds sunken place of a few. I'm not going to go into too many, but horror type games. And there's quite a few for Savage Worlds. Most notably is going to be East Texas University. That is the one I have the most experience with, and it is the only instance that I'm aware of. I don't know if I can actually say that, because I know Delta Green and Call of Cthulhu has them as well, but like horror campaigns. And with East Texas University, it's more of like a heroic fantasy. You can do like rituals and stuff, and the magic is not like fast. Same with Cult. These are very slow rituals, maybe not as bad as Cult, but with a K. But there's a table that's pretty neat where you need like these components, which, okay, sure, similar to D&D, but it's a little bit more involved. You've got your normal components, then you've got your exotic components, and the way I played it with my group is, each one would need, X amount of these and these exotic ones, depending on how powerful it was, right? And with Savage Worlds, you kind of have general powers, and I would take those general powers and make them a little bit more specific for these rituals that they were finding and they were able to do. And depending on your group, you can really kind of get into like what the ritual involves. But anyways, they do have a campaign which, is here. I don't know what it's called. It just says, so it's the Degrees of Horror plot point campaign, and that is an excellent plot point campaign. I had my best social encounter that I've ever had in any game towards the end of that campaign, and so good. You are a high school or college student, and it does a good job of implementing like your test scores and the stress of going to school with also dealing with the ghosts and horrors and zombies and all kinds of crazy stuff. As kind of alluded to already, it does use Savage Worlds, of course, so you do have your exploding dice, you have your 2d6, and 4 is your target number. The 2d6 don't add up, you just use the highest of the 2, and if you have a modifier to it, you'd add that. But yeah, East Texas University, can't say enough good things about ETU. Excellent system, and although it is like heroic horror, you can still die, and it does have that death spiral effect that Savage Worlds has, where you take a negative to your stats once you're gaining wounds and your health is going down. Kind of a sanity system to some degree with the spirit, and you'll make like fear rolls and stuff, but it's not as fleshed out as some other games like Alien and Call of Cthulhu and stuff. Slight pivot, I do want to mention 3 other Savage Worlds games. This might be the this might be the third best one-shot game that I'm about to mention, and that is Trailer Park Shark Attack. Nobody talks about this, and I don't know why. Same thing with East Texas University. I feel like Monster of the Week really overshadows it in a lot of like YouTube videos that I've seen. But Trailer Park Shark Attack is amazing. Very campy, Sharknado type situation where something happens with sharks and you have your characters don't even make a character. You can actually get the printouts of just these like obnoxious... I forget the exact setting where they live in that like world. If it's, I think it might be Florida or somewhere around there, because I know there are like trailers and stuff that you can have for like your environment. And yeah, it's got all of the silly aspects of characters are just dying left and right, and a lot of times in the most silly of scenarios. And I remember with the first time that I ever ran it was just so great, where people were kind of, although people were dying, they just loved it. They had so much fun because it had that sci-fi channel feel to it, where there's like, oh man, okay, well, I was, an obsessed cheerleader, and now I am an old man that works at a gas station, and they would have these weird quirks and equipment and stuff that just added a lot of flavor and spice to the game as they're just cycling in and out. It's like a, what is it called in like Shadow Dark and DCC? It's like a death funnel. It's kind of like that, but the whole game is like that. And there are stories with them where it's, very silly shark type stuff, where there's like a sharktopus or an alien shark and a mech shark, a flood, all this crazy stuff. A blast. It uses Savage Worlds, of course, just like all these other ones do. These next 2 are a little bit more on the action, adventure, but there are horror aspects to it that I want to mention, which is Rippers and Accursed. The reason why these are amazing, and I think are worth mentioning, is that with Accursed, you get to be the bad guys, essentially, which is so cool. So you are playing as the monsters. There's like this monster world, essentially. And there's these different factions with the different witches and stuff. And, there's kind of like werewolves and like Frankensteins and stuff. And I've had a lot of fun with that one. People just the idea, the novelty of just playing as the monsters and the society of the monsters in like a fantasy world, super cool. On the complete opposite end of that is Rippers, which you're almost in like Jack the Ripper, Victorian England times. And the whole game is almost like Monster Hunter in a sense, or maybe even closer to Bloodborne, perhaps, where you're fighting these monsters, but you're also getting parts from these monsters, and those parts modify yourself, almost in like a cyberpunk way, but instead of it being mechanical, it's biological. Maybe Resident Evil would be more accurate. And yeah, you get these cool bonuses from, like, you know, if you have something from a werewolf or a vampire or whatever, and you get like stat increases, but it also like messes with you, similar to Cyberpunk and things like Resident Evil, where, you know, you can go too far with the, I forget what they're called, but there's like a certain doctor that you have to go to that, you know, can give you the arms of a werewolf or some crazy shit like that. Super cool game. It's also built around Jack the Ripper being not actually the murderer that he was in real life. Jack the Ripper is, I guess he like starts the Rippers, and he's actually killing these monsters, and he's carving up the pieces that he needs, but people don't know that. They just think that he's murdering people. Really cool twist. Okay, it's enough Savage Worlds, I promise. Next up, I want to mention Dread, and this, if 10 Candles would be my number 1 recommendation for a one-shot, Dread would be my number 2. But, that's tough. That's tough. It may be my personal preference. I bet a lot of people like Dread better. Dread is going to be built around a Jenga tower. So you may have heard of this. And when you would roll dice, instead of rolling dice, you're pulling a block out of the Jenga tower. Very similar to 10 Candles, very narrative, character building. It's really not based on stats. There's no min-maxing here. You're just going to have words. Your character will be words. Like, yeah, that's you. Character, that's words. And if your character happens to topple the tower, then you are removed from the story. That could mean different things, but you're done. And although this sounds kind of like, is that even like a tabletop role-playing game? I mean, maybe, but I think it is. And I also think that although it's very different than what you may be used to, pulling that piece out of the Jenga tower is going to fill you with more anxiety than any dice roll ever will. I promise you. And it's kind of based on you, right? So it's not up to chance. Like, it's kind of, I mean, I guess it is a little bit depending on where the tower is at that time, but that's a pretty intense moment when the tower gets crazy. And it also, similar to 10 Candles, both of these types of games, they create a narrative structure that really makes sense for horror games, where things are kind of chill in the beginning, things aren't too crazy, but as you progress, the tower's getting crazier, you're rolling less d6 because you have less candles. Also, thematically, you have less light at the table too, which is, you know, things are getting darker. Things are ramping up, and things are getting worse, as it should through the story. Love it. Love it. And you can play a variety of different types of games because it's, you know, not mechanically focused. These last two might be a bit of a stretch. Similar to like Accursed and Rippers, these are a little bit more in like the fantasy side, but I feel like at a minimum they are worth mentioning. Shadow of the Demon Lord, it does have a sanity mechanic, so just that alone, I feel like it's worth mentioning. Your character is somewhat capable, more so than a lot of these other games, right? You're not gonna just go crazy when you see something, but there are some terrifying things in many of the books, and if you wanted to pivot more towards horror, you absolutely could. Shadow of the Demon Lord is going to be, of all these games, more D&D adjacent, I would say, and maybe this one as well, so, or the next one. But this is definitely going to be the closest to D&D. Not really the point of this video, but the excellent character classes and the way you build your characters is just super cool. Very similar to D&D, but you start with like almost Dragon Age-esque with your 4 core classes, we'll say, professions. and then that expands out into expert level ones, and then it expands out further into master level. So that's really cool how you know, you have a lot of control within a class system. That's a lot of fun. But yeah, you don't have a ton of health. So it's not heroic fantasy. It's definitely on the dark fantasy side. And the enemies alone, pretty rough. And then also the overarching world, Shadow of the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord is coming. And I think, yeah, this is very similar to the next game. So maybe I can just talk about both of them, which is Morkborg. But Shadow of the Demon Lord, Doom is coming. It's just a matter of time based on aspects of your game and when you make the rolls and stuff, where things are just going to get worse over time as the Demon Lord closes in on like an apocalypse type situation. Same thing with Morkborg. You do make rolls that I forget the exact intervals that you do them. It's a little bit crazier in Morkborg, but the apocalypse is nigh. Morkborg is going to be definitely rules light compared to Shadow of the Demon Lord. Less stats to worry about. It's also going to be D20. Excellent book. This is the only one that I feel like the book is really worth bringing out, just because the book is just so cool. There are classes in this that you can use, but you don't have to use them. The game is so rules light though that you really don't need this whole book. You can really just use like the stuff in the front and the back, or just download the rules light option, which I think you can also get for free. And yeah, Morkborg is going to be very similar to like Dark Souls. I would say Shadow of the Demon Lord and Morkborg. Morkborg would be like when you first start a playthrough of Dark Souls, and then Shadow of the Demon Lord is when you start to establish your character. That's a good way of kind of looking at it. You're a little bit more capable in Shadow of the Demon Lord just because you have more character options and abilities and stuff. Whereas Morkborg, you might be beating people to death with a femur. And also the classes are definitely not nice. Look at this, how they show you the weapons and the die types for them. But I do want to show you, yeah, so here are the classes to give you an idea. Like Gutterborn Scum is a class. The Esoteric Hermit. Wretched Royalty. The Heretical Priest. The Occult Herbmaster. I thought there was like a fanged one. Where's the fanged guy? Did I skip him? I did. It's probably the first one. Fanged Deserter. So that's going to be a little different than like, it's going to be a little different than Shadow of the Demon Lord, which you have dwarves and you have changelings, I think. I think you have orcs too. It's a little bit more fantasy, whereas this is a little bit more human, but your classes are going to be more things like mages and stuff, right? Bonus thing that I just thought of that I think is worth mentioning. If you are looking, I need to stop talking away from the camera because I know the mic is here, is if you are looking for a journaling game that really scratches that horror itch, I recommend 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. I have dabbled. I have not gotten super far, but I am loving what I have done so far. It's very, choose your own adventure. I don't want to spoil anything because most of this book is definitely going to be the prompts. But yeah, very thematic journal style game. The idea in 1,000-Year-Old Vampire is that you're going to make a character, and it's not really based on stats necessarily, but you're going to have like what makes you a vampire, like how did you become a vampire, what your characters are that are involved in your vampire. Let me get my handy dandy. You do have like skills, and you would check off your skills. They don't have like a stat or anything to them. And the whole idea is that you have memories, and you live for so long, you can't keep all the memories in your head. So eventually you're going to get to a point where you no longer have any skills or equipment that you can check off or burn, and that's when your 1,000-year-old vampire is dead. But the journey is what's super cool. Is like, you know, for my 1,000-year-old vampire, he's starting in like the Crusades, but he's already gone like 1,000 years into the future. And just the idea of like how the Crusades affected him and what did he do in that time, and then the prompts that change like what your character's doing. You would figure out the prompts based on once you've completed something that'll add a memory and you remove a memory, but you would roll a d10 and a d6 and that'll move you either, because you're going to subtract the d6 from the d10 result. So it's either, if it gives you a positive, you're going to move forward that many times, or you're going to move negative. You're going to move back. So yeah, super neat game. Boy, I definitely took longer with this than I intended to. I thought I had short descriptions, but I can't stop talking. I hope you gained something out of this. If you're looking for some games to play for October or Halloween, this has been Sacred with the Sacred Art of Gaming. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you feel like you've gathered any useful information from this at all, feel free to share it. We are trying to do that whole thing where we grow. So, until next time, this is Sacred signing out.